Hello there, and welcome into this week's edition of the Rookie Stripes podcast here on Racing News Now. I'm Garth. That's Tyler. How's it going?
Bristol's awesome.
Yes, it is. Why did we ever put dirt on that track? Why? Why did we ever do it?
Because it sucked until they put dirt on it, and then they took the dirt off, and now it's great again. I don't know how to explain this.
It sucked because of the previous car, though. And then the current car didn't do many favors for it. But now my question is, was it really a short track package problem, or was Goodyear to blame?
Honestly, here, not gonna lie, I'm probably gonna get a little bit of shade for this. I didn't hate Gen 6 races at Bristol. I thought they were pretty good. I always thought that having two dates at Bristol, one of them being a night race and one of them being in the middle of the day in the spring, was a little questionable. I don't ever think that the spring race was set up to be successful when you have the night race. Like if anybody's gonna go to Bristol once a year, they're gonna go to the night race.
It was successful during the heyday of NASCAR. I mean, we're talking 90s, 2000s.
Well, so was like Kentucky. I mean,
well, no, I mean that was pre-Kentucky. Kentucky didn't even come on the Cup schedule till 2012.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah. No, heyday NASCAR at Bristol, you could not buy a seat at Bristol. Like there was a waiting list for the night race, like 3, 4, 5 years long. Like
yeah.
you got on that list and you had to wait like 5 years before you got a ticket. The day race wasn't quite as much, but I think the day race was sold out every year in that time period. So it was fine when the races were great and the fans were there to support it. The problem is the racing waned and the fans waned, and all of a sudden you've got a day race that's not drawing a crowd and is subpar at best, depending on the year and the package in the car.
Yeah, ever since they repaved and reconfigured the track in the mid-2000s, the attendance has gone way down, which I think is weird. I guess I wasn't around for the Bristol of old, so I don't really understand some of the hype behind a one-lane track where you can only run the bottom. But I always thought that since they changed Bristol, it's been at least an interesting race to watch, even if they're not like passing for the lead or whatever. You still got guys going around each other because it's such a small track. It's entertaining to me.
Have you actually sat down and watched any of those old Bristol races from before the reconfiguration? Like sat down and watched one of those races beginning to end?
Yeah, I've been watching a couple of them here recently.
Yeah, and you still have that opinion?
I mean, it's good. I would take either one. I just don't see how the fall off was that much between fans.
Because NASCAR fans are fickle and they don't like change.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what the change is. The change could be a good change. Now, granted, I'm not saying that every change NASCAR makes is a good change. If you've watched this or listened to this at all, you know I'm not on NASCAR's side with most of the changes that are made. But no matter how bad or how good the change is, most NASCAR fans are going to hate it. That's just how it goes. Doesn't matter if it really was a good thing and it's going to elevate the sport to new levels and it's going to make things more exciting, and doesn't matter. Fans are going to hate it.
Yeah, I mean, I know my parents used to have tickets for Bristol almost every year, and then they changed the track, and then they said, we're never going back, and all this stuff. I'm like, now Bristol's back to being a barn burner almost every time they go. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't see the big difference. I've always enjoyed Bristol, even through the Gen 6 era. Always one of my favorite races to watch every year. Just the spring race didn't do it for me. It's another one of those things. You know, I love night races and I like big events, and like NASCAR races by themselves aren't big events anymore. Like you have the Bristol night race, you have the Southern 500. Those are events that are hyped up all year to be the race that they are. And then the spring race is just like, oh, we're at Bristol, cool.
Yeah, I mean, but really, that's all you need at Bristol because it's Bristol, baby.
It is Bristol, baby. I mean, this race was awesome. The only negative thing I have about this race is the tire fall off and the strategy was awesome. I wish they didn't explode like every 50 to 60 laps.
See, and that's the thing. And I think hopefully Goodyear learns from this and doesn't do a complete 180 and make the tires so hard when we come back that there's no tire fall off at all. If Goodyear is smart, they will bring back mostly the same tire and just change it to where it lasts 10, 20, 30 laps longer, something more than 50 laps. Because, I mean, 50 laps generally was the limit, unless you were really babying the tires like Hamlin and Truex and some of these guys were. It was really about 45 laps, I think, was the point where everybody just all of a sudden flipped that switch and their just times fell off.
You got Josh Berry doing it like 30 laps in.
Yeah. So, but the other thing with that is I almost don't want them to change it at all, because now that the teams have experienced this and they know what to expect, they're going to change some things with their setup and try to do things to where the tires will last longer in the fall. So I would almost rather Goodyear not touch the tires at all and just let the teams experiment around it and try to fix it as best they can themselves. Because no matter, I mean, it was an accident. Goodyear did not mean to bring a tire like this, but I'm glad they did. Now don't change it.
Well, the weird thing to me was Goodyear said this is the same tire they brought last year for the night race, which this is far and away differently than the night race we saw last year. So I don't know if the resin being put down did something to it, but I mean, that was going to be my guess. And then we saw Kyle Busch run the high line for an entire run and still blew a tire after like 50 something laps. I don't know if that was the resin too, or I don't know. It was just weird.
I think weather played a big factor into it. I think the difference in a warm fall night at Bristol and I don't know what the temperature was, but I don't know
It's like
that
in
it
the
was
50s, I
super warm.
think.
Yeah. So fairly cool spring day at Bristol, I think, is going to change how the tires react with the concrete and make it to where they don't lay down rubber quite as much. I think.
So you
Now,
think they just never got temperature in the tires enough to even rubber the track up?
I think that's exactly what it is. Yes. And again, I'm not a mechanic. I'm not an expert. I've never worked on a race car. I don't know much about tires, so don't take that for gospel. But in my non-professional opinion, I think that's what it was.
Show us the data, Denny.
Yeah, right? Denny's data will be skewed because he won.
No, yeah.
I hate the people coming out of the woodwork, and I feel like you're possibly one of them that hate this race just because Denny won.
I will say I was more than marginally disappointed that Denny won, but it was still a great race.
It was, and I mean that's the thing. And
see, here's the difference. Anybody other than Denny anybody other than the Gibbs car wins, I probably buy the diecast. Not gonna buy the diecast.
I think I really hate it when the people come out of the woodwork and it not even just Denny, anybody that's universally hated, Kyle Busch, Ty Gibbs, anybody that's on that list, that there's more fans that hate them than like them. I really hate it when there's a great race like this and it just unequivocally is a great race. It doesn't matter hardly who you ask. Now, there's always going to be naysayers that are going to hate it. You're never going to find 100% of fans that agree that one race is great, even if you take out who won the race. But I hate it that number increases for people that hated the race strictly because of who won. Like, if your whole mindset on the race gets changed because of who won, I don't know that I can help you. And I really question how much of a fan you actually are if your opinion on the race itself can be swayed just because Denny Hamlin won the race. Now, come on. Really?
No,
Are you a race fan or are you just a Denny Hamlin hater?
I love the race. I thought it was an awesome race. I'm just probably not going to go watch the highlights 17 times because I don't care about who won the race.
Speaking of highlights, I really liked, I think it was on the Stuart Haas social media. They put up a video of Briscoe had just come out on fresh tires and he's just weaving in and out around everybody doing like 20, 30 mile an hour faster than they were. And they put Mario Kart music underneath it. And it was great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I just hope Goodyear doesn't change anything because other than the couple of tires that actually popped, which that started giving me, I know this isn't really a fair comparison. It started giving me 2008 Indy vibes when they were just blowing tires.
Yeah.
But once they stopped blowing tires, it was an awesome race. I just don't want to see people get deleted from contention just because they popped a tire, you know?
No, I agree. And like you said, outside of a couple that happened to, there really wasn't that many times that happened. And that was more early on when guys were really starting to figure out how bad this tire wear actually was. And they were trying to figure out how far they could actually push these tires. Because, I mean, the tires were gone well before the fuel ran out. So we weren't going full fuel runs. It was tire runs, which is great because, I mean, how long has it been since we've had a race where you went a full tire run before a fuel run? Like, I remember races back in the 2000s where that would be a thing. It wasn't every race, but there were times and maybe certain tracks where you were more concerned about saving your tires than you were getting to the end of a fuel run because that's just how it played out. And this track eats tires. And I'm glad we finally found a tire track combination again to where that can happen. And I really hope we don't get away from that.
Yeah, I'd say like Charlotte maybe has been about the closest thing to that, where you almost need tires before you need fuel. My favorite kind of races are the ones where you can go ham on the tires and pit for tires before you need fuel, but there's also the option to save your tires and just pit when you need fuel. That was definitely not going to happen at Bristol this weekend. But
no, absolutely not. I don't know what a full fuel run was, but we weren't getting anywhere close to it. Like the tires, there's no way they could have saved the tires enough to where we could have gone a whole fuel run. It just wasn't possible.
I'm trying to think, wasn't like a full fuel run at Bristol like 100 something laps?
Maybe that's kind of what I was thinking, but that also seemed a little long. So
I feel like it was around 130 maybe.
It might be.
Because I
think, though, that seems long.
I feel like they've been able to do the whole first stage with no pit stops in recent years, which
I mean,
that's
it's possible.
Abysmal. That's sad that you don't have to pit for the whole first stage.
Well, and that's where stages take a lot of strategy out of the race, and that's one of my biggest gripes with stages is there's no strategy involved now. You just go to the end of the stage, you have a guaranteed caution, and you can pit because the tires and the fuel can make it. Now, we didn't have that this time. The tires couldn't make it a full stage, not even close, but that's how it's generally been in stage racing. And that's, again, one of my biggest gripes with that because it takes away so much strategy in these races. And it's killed a lot of races that probably would have come down to fuel mileage because of how long the final stage is. They can split it up in so many increments to where there's no question they can make it to the end on fuel.
Yeah, and I mean, not trying to get away from NASCAR very much here, but that's probably one of my biggest gripes about F1 right now is there is no strategy involved at all whatsoever, other than like maybe you pit earlier than one guy and you get in front of him on the pit stop and then you're never going to see him again the rest of the race, but you only pit once on like lap 20, 30-ish, and then you never had to come and pit ever again, and I don't see the appeal to that at all whatsoever.
I don't either, and I think a lot of people, are starting to realize that with F1. It almost feels like we're starting to have a shift back from F1 to people coming back to NASCAR and IndyCar just because I think people are finally getting tired of Max Verstappen literally winning every single race. And even back in the pack, there's not even hardly that much racing. So you're just watching a 2-hour parade that you 99% of the time know who's going to win it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of comparisons to, I guess, salty Verstappen fans being like, well, nobody's like this when it was Mercedes. Well, because the Mercedes teammates actually fought each other for the win every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
the team didn't sabotage the second car so Lewis won every race like Red Bull does with Checo.
Yeah, I mean, you got Verstappen starting on pole and winning the race by 30 seconds, and Perez starting like fifth and being in second, 20-something seconds behind. You never had that with the Mercedes guys. They were both there, and usually you had a Ferrari or a Red Bull kind of in the mix somewhere.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, yes, Lewis won a lot of races when Mercedes was on top, but as you said, whichever teammate he had at the time, Valtteri, who was it before? Who was it before Valtteri?
Nico Rosberg.
Yeah, that's right, Rosberg. And then Rosberg even won a championship in that time period.
Yep.
So yes, Lewis was very dominant in that time period, but it wasn't always Lewis, and it wasn't always Mercedes. I feel like Mercedes lost more in that time period than Red Bull has lost in this time period when they've been dominant.
Well, you even had like in 2014-ish, like the Williams was competitive at Austria, and that made for a pretty cool race. Like, there's no full race in the past 3 years of F1 that I would watch again and be like, this was a good race.
I feel like there is one. Something is sticking out in my mind, and I can't remember what race it was. I think it was last year. I can't think of what race it was that was actually not bad. What race was it? Was it Australia last year or maybe the year before that we were joking about? It had to have been last year because we didn't do the podcast 2 years ago.
Right.
We were joking about it basically came down to a NASCAR overtime. Was that Australia last year?
Maybe. I don't know. I honestly tried to block F1 from my memory recently, so
I do kind of remember that race being pretty good, even outside of the weird NASCAR overtime type finish.
Here's what I think is funny. The F1 on-track product sucks. Video game, awesome. NASCAR, on-track product, awesome. Video game, sucks. IndyCar, on-track, awesome. No video game.
Yeah. Okay, so actually, that's one thing I was thinking about the other day. We've had 5 races in the Cup Series so far this year. If you forget Vegas and Phoenix happened, the other 3 races have been bangers. They've been bangers. Like, when's the last time you could say 3 out of the first 5 races of the Cup season were bangers?
Well, and I think it's interesting that we've even fixed some of the problems with the current car already. Like, super speedway racing was awful last year. Show up to Daytona, barn burner. Same thing with Atlanta, even though Atlanta last year was actually... I didn't hate the race. I don't like the racing style. It was entertaining to watch. Then Bristol, first short track we show up at this year. Phoenix doesn't count. F you, Phoenix.
Yeah.
We show up at Bristol this year, barn burner. I mean, I'm excited to see where the season goes.
I am too. I'm worried that Bristol is going to be an outlier and the short tracks are still going to suck. But I'm hopeful that this is a good sign that they really have fixed the short track package. But I guess time will tell. What's the next short track race? Is it Martinsville?
I believe it is Martinsville in like 2 weeks.
No, it's Richmond. Richmond is next weekend, and then Martinsville is the weekend after that.
Richmond's okay.
Richmond hasn't been good since the Gen 4 car. I will be very surprised if Richmond is actually a good race.
Yeah.
Now, I'm hoping it will be. I'm not out here being a negative Nancy going, oh, it won't be good. There's nothing it can do that it would be good. But I have my doubts. It's been a while since we've had a good Richmond race.
Denny Hamlin will win Richmond for like the 9 millionth time by about 3 laps. And we'll be like, oh, wow, the battle per second was cool.
Oh, that was one complaint that I saw this week. People complaining, oh, there was only 5 cars on the lead lap, so it wasn't a good race. I did.
Texas for IndyCar last year was probably one of the best oval races in IndyCar in the past 5 or 6 years, and at one point there were 2 cars on the lead lap.
Mm-hmm. See, and I think that's where people are getting that wrong, is just because there was only 5 cars in the lead lap at the end of the race doesn't mean there were only 5 competitive cars in this race. That's not what that means. That just means you had 5 guys that were really more like 2, maybe 3 guys that actually were able to save their tires enough and didn't kill them early in a run in the first 10, 15 laps to where they were still kind of going gangbusters right at the end, whereas everybody else had already fallen off.
Yeah, I will say, I think Bristol gets a free pass more than a mile-and-a-half track would just because of the lap traffic. There's always something happening on track. If you have a
Absolutely.
mile-and-a-half track, it gets spread out so far that I don't think we would be having the same opinion about it.
Probably not, but when's the last time we had a good tire race at a mile and a half? And I emphasize that with good tire race, because I mean I feel like we've had races where tires have done things like this on a mile and a half and it's not gone as well.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank there.
I am too. Generally, the tires seem like they hold up pretty well on mile and a halves anymore. But
yeah, I just wish there was
generally, up until now, it seems like the tires have held up everywhere. I mean,
yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier, when's the last time we had a tire race anywhere?
Yeah, I wish there was a way that we could get a tire compound that would make it so that you had the option to go hard and use the tires and pit for tires before you needed fuel, and also have the option to save your tires and just pit when you needed fuel and have it somehow even out. I mean, that's like one of the best things in motorsports is like the very rare times that happens. If we could get that more often, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Okay, now here's my conspiracy theory for the day.
Oh boy.
Denny on his podcast has been saying for a while now that one of the biggest things that they could do to fix the racing product, especially on short tracks, is to bring a tire with more fall off.
Yeah.
First race we have with a tire with more fall off at a short track, Denny wins.
I can't even be mad about that one. That's just because Denny's been here so long, and actually, I think a lot of the newer guys were at a disadvantage because you
they
have
haven't
these
had to do races like that. They've never
right.
had to.
And if you think about it, really, I mean, Denny, Truex, Keselowski, and Logano maybe are about the only names I can think of that were really here the last time we had tire fall off races.
I don't think Logano's not been around that long.
He's been around since 2009, 10?
2009 was his rookie season.
Yeah, because
okay, so it's longer ago than I thought it was, but I don't know that we really had tire fall off that much back in that time period.
No, but you still had
away from it.
You still had the horsepower and actually having to manage your tires.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's my point is none of these guys that have been here for a shorter amount of time have even had to manage tires ever in their Cup career.
No, like I'm looking down through the results right now, and I mean, yeah, you got Denny, Truex, and Keselowski in the top 3, and then outside of Logano, I don't see anybody else that's been around. I mean, Kyle's been around that long, but Kyle blew a tire, so obviously Kyle doesn't know what he's doing with tire wear.
He forgot.
Yeah, that's literally about it. Like, I think literally they're the only 4 left that had rookie seasons prior to 2010.
I hate that statistic.
Right? Like I'm genuinely.
You can kind of hear the pain you could hear the pain in Kevin Harvick's voice announcing this race. He's like, "Oh, I'd be wiping the field right now."
Okay, I lied. Michael McDowell has been around since 2008.
Does that really count?
Not really, because his first full season wasn't until
What was his first season
2017.
that wasn't at like BK Racing or something?
Well, I mean, technically, front row is not much of a step up from that, at least until this year it wasn't.
Yeah.
So honestly, you could really say his whole career. I mean, because he was in the 95 with Levine Family Racing in 2017. That was his first full season. Prior to that, he ran most of the season in 2016, 2013, 2012, 2011, and about half the season in 08, 2010, and 2014 and 2015. So I mean, he was really like half to most of the season up until 2017. So yeah, I don't know if you can really count Michael McDowell, but yeah, outside of that, I don't think there's anybody else with a rookie season prior to 2010 at least. AJ Allmendinger. He's been around.
Was he even in that race? I guess he was.
Yeah, he was. His rookie season was 07, and his first full season was 09. So I mean, technically, yeah, he's been around that long, but he's bounced around so much.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying, because I don't know that, I don't feel like Allmendinger has been around long enough that you could call him somebody that really knows how to save tires.
Here, we'll narrow it down. Competitive drivers that were in the championship fight before 2012.
So literally the top three: Hamlin, Truex, Keselowski.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, they finished top three.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by that.
They're the only ones that have ever had to deal with this in their whole career.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised by that at all. You did see some guys like kind of figure it out in the middle of the race and kind of get closer at the end. But even then, we started getting on those long tire runs towards the end of the race, and those three were by far the best cars. I was encouraged by Chris Buescher, though. He came from back to almost the front and didn't have many issues. He had like one stint where the tires were terrible, but I mean, so did everybody.
I was encouraged by Josh Berry in this race. Qualified second, had a lot of speed. I would have been very curious to see what he could have done if this tire situation hadn't have happened, because he had a lot of speed in this race. And really, honestly, SHR did as a whole. I mean, Briscoe was up there at one point. Preece was kind of flirting with the top 10 a lot of the race. Funny enough, all three of them ended up 12th, 13th, 14th at the end of the race. So not great finishes, but they had more speed than what they ended up with. And then I think Gragson was up there at one point too. I don't know what happened to him. But he ended up 34th, 6 laps down.
I think Noah Gragson happened to Noah Gragson.
It's probably right. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by Stuart Haas. I'm starting to wonder if they're turning the corner, because I feel like I've seen a little more speed out of them this year so far. And then obviously in this race, at least the 4 and the 14 had a lot of speed and just got screwed by the tire situation.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully SHR can come around and do better. I don't know. They haven't been good in quite a long time, so yeah.
Yeah. I was also pleasantly surprised by Rick Ware Racing. I mean, Justin Haley was up in the top 5 on speed at one point.
Yeah.
And Kaz Gralla was even flirting with the top 10 at different points. Like, both Rick Ware cars had legit top 10 speed. Now, granted, they didn't have the results to show for it. They ended up 17th and 19th. But, I mean, still, that's higher than you would expect a Rick Ware car to be.
Yeah, I thought Justin Haley is very impressive running the top 5 after I just slandered him on the podcast last week.
You did. He heard you, and he was like, nah, bitch, I got this.
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty good showing from him. Good job, Justin Haley. I take back what I said last week.
Look at that. Tyler admitting he was wrong. Is that a first?
It's just rare.
Yeah.
It's about as rare as a good Bristol spring race.
That's true. Hey, maybe that's not going to be rare anymore. Maybe we're getting back into the glory days of Bristol. One can only hope.
I don't know. I've always liked Bristol. I've always hoped it could stay here and do really well. I did think the dirt was kind of a cool idea. Not at Bristol.
Yeah. No, I I 100% am on board with having a dirt race in the Cup Series. Not at Bristol. Put it on a purpose-built dirt track. And that is what I have said since day one, since they announced the Bristol dirt race in the beginning. Put it on a purpose-built dirt track. Take it to Eldora. Take it to Knoxville. Any dirt track that was made to be a dirt track. Don't put it on an asphalt track and lay dirt on top of it. That's not a good idea.
It would be really cool
What?
if NASCAR got together with like World Outlaws and stuff and made a dirt track that was big enough for the Cup Series to be on the schedule every year, but that could also work for wing sprints and modifieds and stuff.
I mean, realistically, they were at Bristol. So, I mean, half mile is big enough, isn't it?
Is Eldora a half mile?
I'm pretty sure it is. Hang on.
Well, Bristol's over a half mile too.
It's like 0.533.
Yeah, something like that.
So it's barely over a half mile. Yeah, Eldora's a half mile.
Oh, well, it. Why are we not at Eldora right now?
That's my question. Basically, because NASCAR said you to Tony Stewart. That's why we're not at Eldora.
Because they just need to start playing the Tony Stewart like Goodyear rant from a couple years ago. I just want that to be played everywhere right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's why the trucks aren't at Eldora anymore. Because Tony has publicly said he wanted Eldora to stay on the truck schedule, and NASCAR stopped returning his calls.
Ouch.
Right? So that's all on NASCAR. Tony wanted Eldora on the schedule, and NASCAR said, nope, we're done with Eldora, and just wouldn't even tell him no, just stopped returning his calls.
And then they started having really crappy races at Knoxville.
Yeah, Knoxville didn't go so well.
That was more of a product of the Truck Series being the Truck Series than the track.
Yeah.
I will say the little like berm type thing that they have on the inside of the turns at Knoxville, that's not helping with the Truck Series.
No, not at all.
You clip that and go flying into the guy next to you.
Like, they literally had a flip there. I think it was the last season. I think it was Jessica Friesen that flipped.
Yeah.
And Fox didn't even show it. They completely missed it. And all of a sudden, you just see her on her roof. And it's like, how did that happen?
Do we even have a dirt track this year?
No, not in any series.
What? Okay.
ARCA is the highest level of NASCAR with dirt this year. And I don't even know that I would call Springfield and DuQuoin dirt races at this point. They're just terrible races.
Yeah, Eldora at least should be on the schedule for trucks and maybe Cup.
Yeah.
We got Iowa for Cup this year, though. I'm actually really excited about that race.
Yeah. I'm curious to see how that goes because Iowa is basically just cornfield Richmond, and Richmond is not the greatest with the Cup cars, so I'm curious to see how that goes.
I think Iowa's got more banking than Richmond, though.
I don't think it does. I think it's an exact carbon copy, basically.
I know the banking lasts later into the corner than it does at Richmond, because Richmond, you're coming off the turn and it's flat.
Yeah, that might be true. Let's see. Iowa, 7/8 of a mile. Where's the banking at here? Here we go. 12 to 14 degrees in the turns. Progressive banking. That might be the difference. Front stretch is 10. Back stretch is 4. Remember those numbers. Do you remember those numbers?
Yes.
Do you? What were they?
Yes. 12 to 14 in the corners, 10 on the front straight, and 4 on the back.
Good job.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a little longer than Richmond, too, because Richmond is 3/4 of a mile. So it's slightly longer. The banking is pretty much the same. Richmond does not have the progressive banking. It's just 14 degrees all the way. And the front stretch is 8 degrees, not 10. But the back stretch is still 2. Or wait, was the back stretch 4 at Iowa?
4, yeah.
Okay, so there's 2 degrees less banking on both straightaways at Richmond. And instead of 12 to 14 degree progressive, it's all 14 degrees in the corners.
I just think Richmond and Iowa race completely differently. I think like it's got about the same numbers, but you got to think off of 2 at Richmond, it just goes flat. Like right as you exit the corner. Iowa, it stays pretty banked all the way until you're going straight.
Maybe that's been my problem in video games at Richmond. Because I have a hell of a time getting off turn 2 at Richmond without
Yep.
slapping the wall.
Yeah, you get off 2 and the cars go straight.
Yep. That's
Yep.
exactly what it is.
That's how I've been doing Richmond too.
Yep. Oh, but I thought you were an esports prodigy. I thought you were so good at the games.
Only at Bristol.
Oh, okay. So you're just a Bristol merchant.
I'm just a ringer.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Although I did get on
at Bristol, but not anywhere else.
I did get on the other day, and the AI is terrible at Eldora. I figured that out pretty quickly.
Yes, it is.
I won. I qualified on the pole in my own truck that was like 2 seconds faster than second place.
Yeah, from the moment they put Bristol dirt in that game, which I think was Heat 2, because I think that was the first time they put trucks in. Yeah, Eldora was so easy. They never got the AI right there. The AI was extremely slow in every game that it was in.
I like wrecked at one point and didn't fix the car and still won by a lap.
I had one time where it was like a 5-lap stage, and I lapped all but the top 5 in one stage.
Sounds about right.
It does. So I think that's all we got for Cup this week. We're kind of going backward, but Cup was where it was at this week. So let's look at our points leaving Bristol for the Cup Series. Oddly enough, stage points are so stupid. And I say this being the guy that leaves here with more points. Tyler's pick, Chris Buescher, finishes 7th. My pick, Ty Gibbs, finishes 9th. So you would think Tyler would leave Bristol with more points. Nope, because Ty Gibbs got stage points. He won both stages. So Tyler leaves with 10 more points, even finishing 2 positions back. No, I leave with 10 more points. My bad. I leave with 10 more points, which gives me a 16-point lead. You would have cut the lead to 6. It would have been less than that, because you would have cut the lead to 4 points if Ty didn't have stage points.
Yep.
Gotta love stage points. I only like them when they benefit me.
You said you didn't like them, and they benefited you this week.
They did benefit me this week. So, yeah, 129 to 113 is my lead over Tyler. After race number 5, we head into COTA Circuit of the Americas this weekend. Truck Series was also a pretty good race this weekend. Not quite as exciting as the Cup race, but pretty good race. Either win. Happy to see a Christian Eckes win. First win of the year. Even if Tyler picked him, I was happy to see him win this race. He ran a very, very good race and outdueled Kyle Busch. Now, if there had been one more lap, might have been a different story, because Kyle was running him down in the final laps and got to his bumper at the checkered flag. So one more lap, and we might have had a very interesting finish. In fact, I think it was Regan Smith that interviewed Kyle on pit road after the race and asked him, if there'd been one more lap, what would have happened? And Kyle goes, we would have wrecked. But yeah, either way, very exciting finish, because even if Kyle didn't get there, just the excitement of you can visibly see him closing and not knowing if he's going to get there and what's going to happen when he gets there. Super exciting finish. Glad to see Christian able to pull it out, though. Good race overall, though.
Yeah, I mean, I know I pick Christian every week, but it was bound to pay off at some point. I'm glad he picked up the win this week, and being able to outduel Kyle Busch somewhere like Bristol, that's pretty important for a truck guy. It was a pretty good race. I think if we hadn't had the barn burner that the Cup was this week, we'd be talking about the truck race a lot more. But, I mean, it was another truck race at Bristol, which is usually pretty good.
You know, as much as you're picking Christian, we need to come up with a chant. Like John Roberts had "stick with the Biff" when he was picking Greg Biffle every week on race day. We need to come up with a chant, something that kind of flows like that. Like, I guess it didn't rhyme, but something that flows.
Check it with Eckes.
Well, what is it? Check it with Eckes?
That's what came off the top of my head.
I mean, not bad, but I think we can do better. What do you guys think? In the chat or in the comments down below, let us know what's a good chant for Tyler, since he's picking Eckes every week anyway. We got to get a good chant going, like "stick with the Biff."
Stick with the Biff.
Best one gets used, and you'll get credit for it. Ty Majeski proved this week that I was exactly right, that he's mid and does not deserve the ride he's in. Spun out on his own and collected his own teammate. Now, granted, he collected the mid teammate also, but that's another case. We're not here to slander Ben Rhodes. We're just here to slander Ty Majeski. And yeah, basically proved my point. Spun out on his own on a straightaway, mind you. Yeah, like there's no excuse for Ty Majeski at this point. Like, bro, clearly most weeks is the fastest Thor Sport truck. And either, like Atlanta, makes no move for the win and is just content with running second or wherever he ends up, or wrecks himself out of contention for the win and doesn't even make it to the end of the race. So why is he still in a fast truck? Why are Duke and Rhonda Thorson still giving him a ride? I mean, clearly those ThorSport trucks had speed this week. Matt Crafton was up there running with Eckes and Busch near the end of the race. Now, granted, he wasn't right there at the end, but I'd say Matt Crafton was probably the third fastest truck in this race, and just really couldn't keep up with the 19 at the set and the 7 as we got down to the end of the race. In fact, fell back to 4th. Zane Smith got around him. Good day for McAnally Hilgeman, though, as a whole. 3 of their 4 trucks in the top 5. Eckes first, Zane in 3rd, and Ankrum in 5th. Daniel Dye, not so great of a day, ended up in 13th.
How will Michael Waltrip recover?
That is a very good question that I do not want to know the answer to.
Daniel Dye.
Oh, boy.
Look at this onboard from Daniel Dye.
The shopdanieldye.com onboard. Oh. I have another conspiracy theory that that shopdanieldye.com was not making enough money to sponsor that onboard the whole time. It was Michael Waltrip paying out of pocket and just putting shopdanieldye.com.
Another one I got is Daniel Dye runs the Mafia and Michael Waltrip owes him some debt.
You know, he does kind of look like he would be in the Mafia. I've noticed on social media he hangs out with a lot of like MMA fighters. So he does kind of give off slight Mafia vibes. I could see it. I could absolutely see it.
Yep. Driving a petty truck with design with Mafia. Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I could see that. I think that's all we got though for trucks. Not a whole lot to talk about outside of Eckes winning, KFB giving him a good run at the end, and Majeski being mid and proving my point. Points after this race. Tyler is your new Truck Series points leader, which I believe makes you the leader in Xfinity and trucks. Didn't you take the Xfinity lead after last week?
I don't remember.
I think you did. I'm going to double check that here. I think you did. No, I have a very big lead in Xfinity.
Oh,
what am I thinking of?
I don't know. I just want to point out that, like, you make fun of me for picking Eckes every week, but if I had picked Eckes the previous week at Vegas, I would have an even bigger lead over you this year.
Except that I picked him last week at Vegas so that you couldn't.
Exactly. It's working out.
So what you're saying is you're banking on Eckes winning the championship is basically what you're banking on.
Pretty much.
Okay. I mean, fair enough. I think there's a very good chance of it. I mean, he won Phoenix at the end of the year last year, so he was clutch in the right moment. Just unfortunately, that moment came a little late after he had been eliminated.
You heard it here first. Christian Eckes, 2024 Cup Series or Truck Series champion. Yeah, Cup Series. Yep.
He's going to switch over to Cup now, declare for points, and he's going to win the championship.
Hey, he'd be the faster Napa driver. Oh,
you got to get something in every week, don't you?
it was. I mean, Chase Elliott did lead like 3 laps this week. So okay, fair enough.
That might be the most laps he's led in over a year. I don't know. Anyway, truck points.
Most popular driver.
Truck points leading this race. Tyler obviously comes away with the most points after the Eckes win. Taylor Gray finished in what, 7th? Yes, 7th. So that puts Tyler in a 10-point lead now. Big swing.
Beat you by 22 points this week.
You did. So that means what? You came into this minus 12?
Yeah.
That's a big swing.
Yeah.
Yes, Tyler is your new Truck Series points leader. I believe after looking through the rest of them, that's the only one he's leading now, except IndyCar. Got to change that. So how's your picks doing after this week, after Bristol? Better, worse than us? Let us know down in the chat or in the comments how you doing compared to us. Are you keeping up with us? Are you doing better than us? As usual, probably doing better than us. Well, I guess you can't be doing better than Tyler in trucks this week, but you could be doing the same as him. So, yeah. That's it for trucks. Before we get into picks, we've got IndyCar at the Thermal Club this weekend and F1's in Australia. Tyler, what do you got for open wheel this weekend?
F1's in Australia. That's all I got for F1. We get to watch Max Verstappen win a race upside down this week.
You know, as far ahead as he is, he probably could flip and still win.
Probably. Would that be more or less impressive than Danny Sullivan's spin and win at the 500?
Yes.
Okay. All right. IndyCar, we're at the Thermal Club this week. All 27 full-time cars are entered into qualifying and the heat races. So they're going to split the field in half. They've got a draw for qualifying order on Thursday evening. So they're going to do like the normal qualifying thing where they split the field in half and then have half the field set, and then the other half set the grid for heat 2. And then the top 6 from each heat race are going to make the final. So we're only going to have 12 cars in the final race. I don't know how I feel about that. I think the qualifying format kind of screws a lot of guys out in races right now just because there's so many competitive cars that are so close that like thousandths of a second gets you into the top 6 potentially, or you're starting 15th. So I don't know how I feel about that. I do like that they have the heat races. I think that makes it a little bit more fair. We'll see how it goes. I'm cautiously optimistic about this. I think that the whole Thermal Club idea is just kind of a elitist thing. Like IndyCar's taking a grasp at trying to get some people that have money to be interested in the sport, which fair enough. I mean, we do need people interested in the sport that can fund different things, but it's not an all-star race that's designed for the fans in probably the most fan-friendly form of motorsport in the world. Like, I know Cup's done the all-star races at Charlotte, and then they've been moving it around recently. And those were always like, I thought those were fan-oriented. We did things because it made the racing interesting. Like, it was fun to watch kind of stuff. And I don't know if this is going to be the same thing, but maybe the drivers being able to just kind of lay it all out there and not have to go for full season points for a week might be interesting to watch. But at the same time, some of the guys might say it's not for points, so I don't care, and just kind of ride around. We'll see how it goes. Winner gets $500,000 in the $1 million challenge, which is kind of ironic, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the problem with all-star games or races in general is Some guys don't always take it as seriously as what you would like them to take it, because it's not for points. It's not for anything relating to the overall season. It's just kind of for fun and for money. And so is 50-50 whether guys are going to take it seriously or not. Like, it seems like most of the guys in NASCAR take the Clash and the All-Star race seriously for the most part. But then you look at other sports. I know I was watching a lot of the NBA All-Star Weekend stuff a few weeks ago, and it was very hit or miss whether some of these guys that were involved were actually taking it seriously or not. Like, I was watching the skills challenge, and they had 3 teams, and I don't remember which team it was, but one of them was just not taking it seriously, and they were just out here goofing off and doing stupid things. And it's like, why are you even doing this? Like, let somebody else in here that actually wants to do it and wants to show off what they can do. Like, why are you just out here screwing around?
Yeah, I know when football still did, like when the NFL still did the All-Star game, like most of the guys didn't bother trying because, you get hurt in a meaningless game and then miss next season. That kind of sucks. I feel like it's a little different in motorsports, and I like how NASCAR's always done it, where the All-Star race is actually a big event that actually kind of means something. And I think the purse prizes that they get for winning the race, like, that's a pretty decent amount of money every time. So I think that's a good incentive for them. I'm glad that they've got the money for IndyCar. I mean, $500,000 is a lot of money. I can think of a billion things I can do with $500,000, but we'll see how it goes. I just don't want, like, I don't know, one of the Dale Coyne cars to win because nobody else gives a
Right. Although that would be kind of interesting.
The 2 unsponsored Dale Coyne cars leading the field to turn 1.
Can you imagine, like, what the response to that would be?
Rick Ware would be the most goated IndyCar owner because he would be the only one to have won a skills challenge type of race.
That's true.
I think the last time we did
imagine?
one of these was Laguna Seca, and I think 1992, something like that. I was reading something about it the other day. Like, Emerson Fittipaldi won it, and like all the teams entered their backup cars for the race, and Emerson didn't win it because they had their oval car in the race and they hadn't moved the fuel injectors around because they're set up for the fuel to go into it when they're turning left. And he ran out of fuel on like the flat right hand corner at Laguna Seca because it just threw the fuel away from the injectors and it just ran out. He still had fuel in the car, but it wasn't near the injector, so he lost the race, which is kind of, I think that's funny, but
Yeah.
we'll see how this goes.
Speaking of Rick Ware, you know what I just realized?
What?
Now that that team seems to have decent speed in the Cup Series, there's really no meme team left in the Cup Series. Spire has speed now. Rick Ware has decent speed. They have enough speed that they're not like the joke running around in the back every week.
Yeah.
Like, there's not really a meme team in the Cup Series anymore.
All right, so the charter system, we're done with that now. We need a meme team back, all right?
I see, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's a product of the charter system.
Didn't we only have 36 cars start Bristol this week?
I think so. I mean,
Chris
that
Buescher
makes
started
sense.
last in 36.
I mean, that would make sense. Yeah, 36. We had 36 at Phoenix last week too.
Which, I mean, when I was a kid, you get like 50-something people qualifying for 43 spots. Like, this is sad.
But that's the thing with the charter system, and we've talked about this before. The difference in what a charter team gets paid versus what a non-charter team gets paid means that it's really not worth it for a non-chartered car to even show up anywhere outside of like Daytona, maybe the 600, maybe Indy, the races that pay a lot more, or maybe Daytona or Talladega where there's a better chance that they get a higher finish. There's really no point in them showing up because they're not going to make any kind of return on their investment to showing up at that race.
Yeah.
And that's how it's been for a few years now because of the charter system. Like, open teams don't show up except for a select few races.
Hate the charter system. You know, if we didn't have the charter system, we'd have a Dale Junior Cup team.
Yeah, we probably would. But would that be a good thing or not? Would it be any good of a team?
I don't
Or
know.
would
We'd
it
have
be like
43
Colleague is
cars.
now? Would it be like Colleague is now and just turn into mid Cup and mid Xfinity?
I don't know. We'd have 43 cars in the Cup Series. It'd look cool.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
It would make Teresa Earnhardt mad. Anything that makes Teresa Earnhardt mad makes me happy.
Exactly. On to picks for this week. We've got basically every series in action this week. I mean, we've got ARCA East. We don't have main ARCA, but we've got ARCA East. They are at Pensacola at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Yeah, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. That'll only be on Flow Racing because it's an East race. And then like tape delayed on NBC like a week later. So we are going to make a pick because there is an entry list out, and it's actually kind of an interesting entry list. There's more names on here than I expected there to be that might be halfway competitive. I mean, Bubba Pollard is going to be out there in the Phoenix Racing #1 car. Sawalich obviously will be there. Gio Ruggiero will be in the 20. He showed a lot of speed at Phoenix. Connor Zilich making his first start of the season in the 28 for Pinnacle. And then you've also got Jake Finch will be in a Venturini 55. So, I mean, there's 4 or 5 names in there that hypothetically could win this race. That's more than you can say for most East races in recent years. So, are we seeing a resurgence of the East Series? Probably too early to tell, but it's a good question to ask nonetheless. Either way, picks. Tyler, who you got for this one?
I'm going to go with Connor Zilich this weekend. He's making his first ARCA East start. No, it's his second ARCA East start. He he finished second in his first start last year. He's got 2 IMSA starts this year at the 24 Hours of Daytona and 12 Hours of Sebring in an LMP2 car, and both times they won their class. So he seemed competitive in pretty much everything I've seen him drive. He did seem really competitive in those cars at those races. I think he's probably one of the more talented drivers in this field, and I think he's got a shot.
Fair enough. I'm surprised that neither one of us picked William Sawalich, because William Sawalich seems like he's always the shoe-in at this point. Now that there's no full-time driver in the 20 at Venturini, but I'm going to go with Bubba Pollard. Bubba is an immense talent on the short tracks. Like, he is basically the GOAT in late models at this point. So to see him come out and try to make an ARCA start at a track that I don't know his stats off the back of my hand, but I'm sure he's been to Pensacola numerous times. I feel like he is going to do very well in this race and possibly sneak out the win from Sawalich. I'm still not convinced Sawalich is going to lose, but just in the interest of not pulling a Tyler and picking the same driver every single week, we're going to go with Bubba Pollard.
Hey, in my defense, Sawalich was available and didn't pick him.
That's true. I am very impressed with you on that one. I really expected you to go Sawalich because I made my pick first, and I'm like, he's definitely going to pick Sawalich because I didn't pick him. You surprised me there.
He's probably going to win the race and beat both of us, but, whatever.
On to COTA, all 3 series in action from COTA this weekend. Cup, Xfinity, Trucks. Xfinity and Trucks are having a doubleheader on Saturday. Trucks first up, 1:30 p.m. Eastern on FS1. Tyler, who wins the truck race?
Well, I'm going to predict that Christian Eckes is going to win, but I'm going to pick Nick Sanchez, and I think Christian Eckes is going to win because I'm not picking him.
But you picked him this past week and he won, so that's not good logic.
Probably a fluke. Anyway, no, I am picking Nick Sanchez this week. He got a top 10 here last year. He's been showing a lot of speed this year, and I think he might have a shot this week.
Doc is really wanting to make his presence known right now.
Doc thinks Christian X is going to win.
He probably does. I think Sanchez is a decent pick. I, though, am going to go with the guy that finished 4th in this race last year. Ran a very good race at COTA last year, has had a lot of speed to start the season in that McAnally Hilgeman truck. His teammate picked up his first win last week at Bristol, and I think Tyler Ankrum wins this week at COTA, picks up his second career Truck Series win, and locks himself into the playoffs, putting 2 MHR trucks into the playoffs. Xfinity later in the day on Saturday. That'll be at 5 p.m. Eastern on FS1. Trucks are the Expel 225. Xfinity will be the Focused Health 250. Tyler, who wins the Focused Health 250?
AJ Allmendinger is going to make it 3 in a row. That's all I got.
Fair enough. I mean, that's a pretty solid pick. The only problem with that, though, is he didn't have Shane Van Gisbergen in the field with him those last 2 times. I think SVG goes out, does exactly what he did at Chicago in the Cup Series last year. SVG goes out and wins his first Xfinity race this week.
That'd be so cool. Allmendinger and SVG are battling out for the win at COTA.
It would. Cup Series, Sunday, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox. The Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix. Tyler, who wins?
I'm going to go with Ross Chastain. He has a win here, and in the 3 times we've been to COTA, he's finished in top 5 all 3 times.
Okay, fair enough. I think that is a very solid pick.
One of those top 5s was in the 42 for Ganassi also.
That's true. I, though, am going to go with the guy that has shown himself to be the road course merchant of late, and that is one Mr. Michael McDowell. Won the Indy Road Course last year, the final time we are going to be at the Indy Road Course, hopefully ever. I think he comes out, gets his first win of the season, locks himself into the playoffs, and wins at COTA. Now, again, we also have IndyCar and F1 this weekend, but we're not making picks because F1, obviously, Max Verstappen, and IndyCar is not a points race. It's just the $1 Million Challenge at Thermal. That'll be Sunday at 12:30 Eastern on NBC. And then F1 will be Sunday from Australia. Well, kind of Sunday. It'll be midnight, Saturday night into Sunday morning Eastern for Australia.
Oof.
Yeah. So basically everybody's in action this weekend. We got a lot of racing ahead, or probably a lot of parades for the most part, but maybe a little bit of racing. COTA doesn't usually seem to be great for the Cup Series unless it's a torrential downpour. And then it's just, I wouldn't even call that great. It was just interesting and out of the ordinary. So could be an interesting weekend of racing. Lots of cars on track this weekend. So we're going to be enjoying it, and I hope you are as well. We'll see you back next week. Same time, same place. I'm Garth. That's Tyler. This is the Rookie Stripes podcast on Racing News Now.